Lights on pod, Bryce Crawford. It's great to have you, my brother.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're in California, and you are such a compelling human. I'm not a big fan of your generation. I'm kidding. Like, what if I just roll with that? Um, I am fascinated by what I see happening in the generations that really my daughters are huge. They're in the middle of it too with you. And so getting a chance to talk to you has been cool because I've had a unique look because Ava's 20, Charlie's 18, you're 21.
Mhm.
So I feel like I want to learn more about the generation that you're impacting in such a special way. But thank you for all you're doing. I think it's incredible. Tell maybe for the people watching my pod, give me a little background of who you are, because from what I have learned about you since Hector told me about you and my daughters, I started watching some of your stuff, and I was blown away. It's just rare to see somebody who is bold and kind at the same time. We live in a world where those two things sometimes don't match. But you blew up on all the social media stuff through literally sharing your faith,
Yeah.
and then you find yourself in a seat of pretty significant influence. So give me the road thus far as you know it.
Oh man. Well, I became a Christian when I was 17. I had depression and anxiety going into high school. And when I was 17, I was going to take my life one night, not because I wanted to die, but because I thought it was the only way to get the pain to go away. And I went to Waffle House for my last meal because I love that place. You had Waffle House before?
I love Waffle
It's
House. I
so
love Waffle House so much, I'll walk in and eat food off somebody else's plate if they leave it. Go ahead.
that's how it should be. And I go in there and I have a supernatural encounter with Jesus. Jesus stepped
In the Waffle House?
in Waffle House when I was having my last meal, what I thought was my last meal. Nobody told me about the gospel, shared Jesus with me, supernatural encounter.
Wow.
And so I went in my car and I said, God, if you're really real, take away my anxiety and depression because I really don't want to die. And I haven't had anxiety or depression since that day. And so from that moment, I started sharing Jesus. I was propping my phone up 2 weeks after being a Christian, teaching the Bible, what I knew. I
Hmm.
went to a private Christian school, so I was teaching stuff I was learning in class. And then I was sharing my faith from that moment on. I would run up to people and tell them that Jesus loved them, and then I would run away before they could respond because I was afraid I couldn't answer their question.
It's not a bad business plan. As you're finding your footing as an evangelist, it's like, let me just do the good news part and then I'm out.
And then
So yeah.
run away. So I've been doing that for a while, and then I was so encouraged because I feel like everyone's so afraid to share their faith,
Hmm.
and I'm not afraid to talk to anyone. I mean, I do have my moments, I get scared, I'm human, but I'm like, "Man, I'll talk to anybody." So my heart was, I'm gonna record conversations that I would have normally without a camera going on, but I'll talk to the most extreme people I can find,
Hmm.
so it can encourage people to just tell their best friend that they've grown up with all their life, invite them to church, or, tell a coworker about Jesus or something like that. So that was the heart, was just to talk to the most extreme people or go to the most extreme places and tell people about Jesus.
There's one that went super viral with you talking to a Satanist, I believe.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, that was crazy. We were driving home from Venice Beach, and I see this guy out the corner of my eye, and I do a U-turn in the street and park, and I'm like, "Josh, there's this guy, we gotta go talk to him." And so we go up to him, and I said, "Hey, man, can I ask you some questions, about Jesus?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then we start recording, and he's like, "I'd burn Jesus on the stake." And I'm like, "Wow, that's a very intense statement." And he's cussing, and I feel like normally, like, people's reaction, like, if they were cussing is be like, "Hey, you can't cuss. If you wanna be a Christian, you can't cuss."
Right.
But I'm like, "Man, like, that's not, like, get that out of here, like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
the gospel." So I'm sharing Jesus with him, he lets me pray for him, and then, yeah, that was it, and I tried to follow up with him, and I was texting him, he wouldn't respond. No one actually knows this yet. We found him again 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and, someone texted us and told us that he was sleeping under this bridge. And so we went and found him and talked to him, and I've been texting him every week, hitting him up, he just wouldn't respond, and I went and talked to him, and I'm so excited, I've been praying for Chad, it's been great. I go up to him and I go, "Hey, Chad, you remember us? We haven't seen you in forever." And he just did not want our help. And I was like, "Well, we love you, man," and he just did not want our help. And, there's like a moment where it's like, was that all for nothing? You know?
Yeah.
We're here, it's been months since that happened, and all for nothing? No, because so many people were encouraged by that video.
By
It
just the journey of
it
the moment. Yeah.
it caused them to go out, and so Chad's incredible. We love Chad. I still stop by there when I see him and try to say hey. Sometimes he doesn't say hey back. It's okay. Like sometimes it's just like a long-term
Have
process.
you done, like, a merch exchange with him?
No, I've tried, but he doesn't like it. Even the black t-shirt, he doesn't.
Take one of his.
Yeah,
Let's just start rocking his stuff, even if it's overtly satanic. We'll just redeem it, you know?
amen, amen. He's good. He's a good guy. I like him, and even if his heart's hard, I mean, he's not mad at us. He's just had a misrepresentation of Jesus, you
Yeah,
know. So
yeah, which you're gonna keep finding. What, so are you officially a Gen Zer?
yeah, I'm a Gen
Okay,
Zer.
so a lot of people have views on Gen Z, and because I've got 2 in my house, maybe 3, I guess Roman will qualify, he's
Yeah,
15. I see a lot of hope, and there's obviously concern with every generation. One of my fears, and you can help me explain this because there's a lot of people who watch our pod. Shout out to all the parents. My kids were actually shocked. I was like, "Dad, you're gonna have someone young?" I was like, "What's your implication?" Like, my podcast is filled with old people. Um, but we have a lot of people that are in the same boat trying to understand they're young people. And so I see somebody like you, and I'm like, "Thank God." Like, I want, my son, I'm gonna say, "See Bryce, he's cool, he's relevant, he's very kind, knows his Bible, proud of who he is, loves Jesus." Um, what do you see in your generation? Because from my vantage point, it looks like we're in a crapshoot when it comes to how people are getting information. That's the
yeah,
first thing I see. Because I was thinking, like, I used to get my news from 3 sources, 2 websites, and that was just reality. Now, depending on your algorithm, I've realized with my kids, I gotta figure out what their stream is to understand who they're becoming. Like, "Hey,
right.
man, what f how what do you think about the election? Where did you hear that stuff?" TikTok. Okay, what kind of TikTok? Okay, cool. So how do you know this about this candidate? How do you not know this about, and then realizing, oh my gosh, like that day is over. Like how do you, what do you think about how everybody's getting their information, or what do you see with Gen Z? Give me an overview from your expert seat as a leader in that generation.
Well, everybody's hungry. They're always listening to something. Everyone's like glued to their phones. So the reason we made the videos was Billy Graham's filling stadiums in the 70s. No one will go into a football stadium. They're glued to their phone, but you can reach 3 football stadiums
Yeah.
through a video. So I'm like, okay, that's where it is. And I think of someone like Andrew Tate, who floods the internet and is now teaching boys his doctrine and whatever he teaches, and he's infiltrating them through social media. So it's like, well, people are hungry, they're glued to their phones, and so because they're glued to their phones, that's what they're getting. So my perspective was like, why not infiltrate all the crap
Yeah.
and just give them truth? And so they're hungry, they want stuff, and then you even see, like, some people even look at us and say, "Well, you talk to these extreme people. Why are they extreme?" And I was like, "Well, they're hungry for something,
Yeah.
so they're gonna be extreme for something other than Jesus." And so I'm like, I can't even imagine how hardcore and
Mm,
all out they'd go for Jesus if they knew him. Because if they're so extreme, they're just so hungry, so broken, they're looking for something. And so I think, like, we just need more voices in social media
yeah.
that are spreading the truth. It's not a competition, like, it's the
Yeah.
same goal as just Jesus, and, like, we need it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's an astute point you make about extreme. I've always taken that tact as well. Like, so I've never been nervous or scared of someone that has, like, I remember one time someone was like, "Can you believe how crazy Scientologists are?" I was like, "Yeah, that's a real Christian way to look at it." They're like, "Yeah, but they believe in, like, spaceships and they believe in this." I'm like, "Do you know what you believe in? You believe that a teenage girl had a baby with no natural conception. You believe a man rose from the dead. You believe a guy walked on water." Like, we forget sometimes that our view, just because we live in a Christian country to a degree, it's just as extreme. And when you
Right.
hold that, it makes it a lot easier to accept other people and go, no, I mean, if you believe Scientology, faith is not your issue. Information might
Mhm.
be helpful because it takes so much faith to be an atheist, for instance.
Right.
I'll sit down with an atheist and be like, man, I envy the amount of faith you have to believe that there's nothing. We came from nothing. We are nothing. And we're headed to nothing. So faith we share. Let's talk about what our faith is in. So I see you being wise beyond your years, not being afraid of some of that. I went to Complex Con in Vegas recently, and my heart felt weird because I hadn't been around that Travis Scott vibe, that Playboy Cardi had a stand there. And some of these rappers, because I used to be a huge hip hop guy, I still am. I don't really resonate with the newer stuff, but my kids keep me up to date. And just the vibe was so incredibly dark, but not in like I'm afraid of it. It's like, man, can somebody lift this weight and start to
Right.
give so because everything is there's satanic imagery and it's just dark music and it's just pain. And you can just hear people are in pain. And my heart went out to it because I'm like, I hope and I know that God's gonna bring some new people through that's gonna at least give people an option. Because if people are gravitating this much towards this rapper's horrible death tone,
Yeah.
maybe they'd be equally as open to hear something that doesn't make you wanna kill yourself
Right.
or live in the dark or do criminal things. So, we need you. We need you to keep doing what you're doing. How have you stayed away from the phone plague? Maybe you're on a journey with it, but, like, when it comes to I mean, you've learned how to make an influence there, but how does it not become your life? Because it's a constant thing in our house. Like, how much time are we on our phones? We found a way to kinda embrace the reality of the day, but at the same time, like, you don't strike me as a guy that is a doom scroller.
Well, I do doom scroll sometimes if I'm on the toilet, or something
Look
like
at that. That's called a pleasure stroke. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, I found myself in high school, I was really disciplined about it, and then I found myself when I lived on my own, it was harder, and so, I cut off all my notifications to social media. I don't know if someone likes a video, I don't know if someone
Smart.
I don't know anything, so I can't know, so it doesn't provoke me to go on it. And then lately, what I do is I put my Bible on my phone because I feel like when my alarm's on my phone and I answer it, I have the option to, like, wake myself up with the opinion of man, and it throws me off. Like, I become so frustrated, quick to speak, slow to listen, everything that like, the worst version of Bryce is when I wake myself up with my phone. So I try to put my Bible on my phone,
I like
and
that.
if I set it aside, I'm, like, pushing God aside for, like, some TikTok time in the morning.
That's a heavy judgment that early in the morning, but we'll let it ride. We let it ride for
So I'm like, "All right, like, what's going on?" But I'm about to get a conventional alarm clock and charge my phone out here in the living room
yeah,
and
I've
just
got I've got an old school alarm clock. It's
I
definitely,
I think it's the way to go. I think it's just I mean, you can't deny it. It's so loud. It's just
yeah, I
a
can't and when I was your age, I began a quest to try to find one successful person that didn't do mornings well. I was like, every leader I see talks about winning their morning. I hate the morning. I like sleeping in. I'm gonna find somebody who's doing big things, and I haven't been able to at 46. So I have, over the years had to embrace like that phrase, if you win your morning, you will win your day. And I wonder if your generation has realized that because it's so common to start your day with your freaking phone.
Yeah,
So your trick has been to just eliminate it, and that's added to your bright spirit. So you're not getting that first thing. That's
right.
huge. Um, what, like, I'm just fascinated by it. Like when you're on, even conversationally, I wonder how your generation's gonna survive because I've watched my children text their friends in the same room. I've seen, for instance, like, and I've learned how to embrace stuff. I was the old dad for a while who was like, "You need to go outside, ride your bikes until the lights come on." And my kids are like, "We don't have lights or bikes." And I'm like, it's just not the same time. They're not gonna know that life. Like, there are things about my growing up days that you're never gonna know the joy of, and vice versa. But, like, you're never gonna know what it's like to go to a high school dance where you can only hear the songs you like there, and everybody loves that. You're never gonna know what it's like to, play football in the street and have your mom yells dinner and nobody's on their phones. You're never gonna know that, like, the place everybody is not because you're on that Snapchat thing that has everybody's face. It's because there's a pile of bikes in the front yard.
Right.
"Where is everybody?" Go find the bikes. Like, that's something that just doesn't exist today. And then there's some great things, like where I've seen my son be on a FaceTime call while playing video games with 5 of his best friends, and they're having a blast. Like, I've had to learn how to embrace that because 'cause I'm like, "That's not a bad thing. That's
Right.
a beautiful thing." So there are parts about technology I love, um, but do you feel like conversationally it's weird? Like, do young people really struggle face to face like it's talked about? Because I can see it a little bit, but you're an outlier with that. Like, you make great eye contact, you speak to people with respect. Like, some young people I see, I'm like, "Have you been out in public in a decade?"
Yeah, like, yeah, I feel like you live in a generation where you can, like, text mean things to someone or live reckless, like, on a screen, and then there's no consequence.
Yeah,
You can't, like that's just, like, how it is. You can
yeah.
text someone, you can say nasty things, you can throw shots at people, like, there are people that throw shots at me daily that will never see my face,
Yep.
that will never be held accountable, like, from me or anyone in this earth for what they said to me.
Yeah.
And, I think it creates this, like, I don't know, scapegoat, like you're someone you're not, and
Mm,
then you're too afraid to be like, and then people get more bold behind closed doors than honest. So,
mm.
I think that's where, again, like being the light infiltrating people with the truth. It's like, well, if they're already there and the stuff that they're being fed is taking them downhill, then maybe I'll try to create something that will disrupt their timeline or their
Yeah.
consumption to change the course of where they're going. Um, and I think like it's just so hard because now we're being rocked to sleep with a lullaby of entertainment. We just numb our problems with social media and
Yeah.
Netflix and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. So your one of your secrets to remaining with this bright spirit has been to regulate social media stuff. Yeah. Do you have like certain times of the day that you're on it? Other times you like knock it off? Like what does that look like on or on a practical basis? Because my thing with my son is I'll be like extreme. Try to give him freedom, and I'm like, "I will burn your phone." Like, hey, to ask him to regulate it is difficult because I struggle to regulate it, and I'm much older. So, what are you doing to keep that in a place where it's resourceful for you and not a horrible burden?
Well, the last hour of my day, I try not to be on my phone. Like, I try to, like, read or something like
I
that,
like that.
and do stuff like that. I try to not touch my phone for the first hour of my morning either. It's like the first hour and the last hour, I try not to be on my phone. I try to go outside, get some sunshine. Like, I feel like all the basic things that these self-help people tell you, like, "Go get some air, go whatever." I try to do these things, and I
True.
find my life, like just so much more joyful. And then when I'm spending time with my girlfriend or my roommates, I try to like not be on my phone. Sometimes when all my roommates go out, we put our phones in the middle and we talk to each other and we play like games that you learn at camp
Yeah.
or something. And then um, I know that for me, I have to discipline myself that after 5 o'clock, no more work.
Yeah.
Like I don't work. I don't
Good.
care how behind I am. Like I give myself till 5 o'clock, and then after 5 o'clock, like I'm loving the people around me, and so I try to, like, put time on myself and have my roommates hold me accountable
Mm,
or my girlfriend or and I'm grateful for my parents, like, my parents helped me regulate my phone time, like, I wasn't allowed to bring my phone to school until I was able to drive. I was a sophomore in high school until I was able to bring my phone to school,
wow. That
and
would have
then,
helped a
like
lot. Yeah.
and I was like, "Mom, are you kidding me? Like, total road like, this is a buzzkill right now, like, you're awful," but I'm so glad that she did that because now I feel like I'm able to enjoy things better.
What do you think we don't know about our 21-year-olds, our 20-year-olds in our house? Like when you see parents, and you'll know it someday, but man, it can feel like a chasm between you and the generation your kids are in. Um, I have the privilege of knowing people like you, did youth ministry my whole life, so I'm still to a degree pretty tapped in, but at the same time, what do we not know? Like, what have you found that most young people are dealing with right now that's like that's different? It's at a different level. Maybe we don't know it. So if you're talking to hundreds of thousands of parents today, and there's people looking in going, what do I not know about my kid? What would you tell them?
Mental health, they're gonna hide it from you, and all they want is to be seen or heard because I was that guy that struggled with depression and anxiety, and no one knew about it. I was popular in my school, everybody loved me. I was winning the sports awards, and then I remember no one knew what was going on behind closed doors, and I had to be different to everyone to make everybody love me. And I think that's where as kids and as young people, we want our parents to come and ask what's going on. But then at the same time, we're afraid that all our parents are going to do is get mad and try to be the answer to our problems. When in reality, we just want a warm blanket
Hmm.
to come behind us and be like, man, I love you. I see you. I'm for you. And I think that was like, and this is no rip on my parents. I think just
Yeah.
like, my parents are amazing. I love them. But I think when I would have these outbursts every 6 to 8 months, I would come crying in front of them,
Mm,
like I'm freaking out, anxiety, and they would say nothing's going on, everything's okay, you're just having a freak out. In reality, I hadn't been approaching them, but I finally was had an explosion, and to them, it was so random.
yeah.
It just didn't make sense that they were like, "Oh, this isn't anything to be important of or whatever," and they kinda pushed it under the rug, but in reality, it was like a cry for help. And so I think our kids, like us, people my age, want to cry for help, but they're afraid of, if I say something, my parents are just gonna get mad. And I
Hmm.
go, if I say something, they're gonna come around me and love me and comfort me. And then as through that comfort, I'm gonna begin to heal. And as I'm healing, come up with the practical game plan of, all right, let's start
Mm.
doing this, let's start doing that. Cause I think when we try to like force feed my generation with like solutions, sometimes we're just like, man, I want someone to like sympathize or empathize with me right now.
Well, that's so great. That's gonna help a lot of parents, just even understanding that. I had to implement a 2-minute rule with Roman because he's like, "Dad, you just talk too much to me. It's too long." I'm like, "What's a fair timetable?" Because I got a lot to say. So we have a 2-minute rule. Like, I can't if I got a thought, I gotta fit in these 2 minutes, and he will listen. But finding those little rhythms is interesting, and it's hard when you have your own son someday, your daughter, to not wanna fix everything is a challenge that's tough. And so it's good to be reminded that maybe our kids don't always need fixing. Maybe they need a warm blanket, and
Mhm.
they're more resourceful than we think. What do you do if your child won't talk to you? Like, what do you? Because like you said, it is like, how do you get information that's needed from, a son or daughter that just doesn't wanna talk? Like, what would you advise?
Yeah, I think I would find as like as a parent, I think I would try to figure out who are the closest people to your kid
Try to get
and then
info.
approach them and just say, "Look, hey, like I care about my kid. He talks to you more than he talks to me. Like, would
Mhm.
you let me know if something's going on or do you notice something, behavior habits?" And if you learn something from the people closest to your children, I believe then you can begin to not say, "Hey, why haven't you talked to me? Why haven't you brought this to me?" Or
Right.
try to, "Hey, you need to fix it this way," but actually become the solution, like,
Right.
love them in the specific way that they need to be loved because they're not approaching it to you. And I think most of the time, like, we're just quiet because, like, we're afraid of being judged.
Mm.
It's like, "Oh, you struggle with anxiety or depression, you're just like everyone else," or this, and that.
Or your consequences. Like,
Yeah,
if I tell my dad that I'm struggling with, um, this particular thing, he's gonna lecture me, take all my stuff away. Oh, so then you just hold it in.
yeah, and then you hide it, and it makes it
Mm.
worse, and then you become your own worst enemy and get in your head like I do. I told you
Yep.
when we did our episode, I'm to get in my head, and, I think it's sometimes people convince themselves that vulnerability is like weakness,
Yeah.
but it leads to transformation. But sometimes, in order for us to get vulnerable, we need to see our parents get vulnerable first and
Mhm.
like meet with us there. Like I didn't start seeing transformation in my family's life until like my dad really started getting vulnerable with us, and that's when we were able to grow and like move past things that had happened because
Wow.
he had to be tough, stand his ground, like, that's who he was, just Southern, really he's amazing, like, everybody loves my dad, but, like, he just had to stay firm, and then finally, when he came to himself and go, "Man, like, I gotta be vulnerable," he finally got vulnerable and did a 3-hour therapy session with my mom.
Vulnerability starts with the parents. I'm not sure you understand how much weight that has because on this side of our life, I've seen a lot of people come to Laura and I, for instance, and say they want a closer connection, but they still hold all their cards.
Yeah,
And what I'm hearing from you again today is that y'all can see through that. It's like if you sit across from a parent who's demanding honesty from you, and you know for sure that they're not honest with you, it's the beginning of a very hollow relationship with somebody you love deeply.
right.
That'd be a fair assessment of that?
No, absolutely, you can read someone in the first 5 minutes you meet them,
Yeah.
and then it just, like, dictates how you close yourself off to them.
But for you, vulnerability, being able to see that in your dad gave you the courage to start maybe doing it in your own life a little bit.
Yeah, it actually allowed me to approach him with things that I had been hurt by of him,
Mm,
like, feeling like I could approach him now.
right.
Because
I hear
before he's like this
attaching you.
big and tough, and I'm like, "Alright, I'm afraid to talk to him because I feel like he's not gonna listen." But now, like, I feel like, okay, I can approach him and talk to him about things, and we're able to work through so much, and it's been amazing. Like, our relationship has been incredible.
Mm,
This year has been so transformative, and it was powerful, and I think, like, that's at least for me, that's all I wanted
mm,
from my dad, and I still want it today, it's like a process, but, like, I want them to be vulnerable, and I was working, and telling my dad and talking to him, and just nothing happened, and then finally, what had happened was we started our podcast this year. He's a dinosaur with phones, but he got a Spotify, and we got recommended to him naturally,
that's awesome.
and he
That's
lived
my
in
son. Is
he
your
was
dad super Southern? Do you have a Georgia twang?
super Southern, hunts, fishes,
Go
like,
dogs.
go
Yeah.
Dogs, a big Georgia fan, and he listened to this episode that we made, and it motivated him to become vulnerable. And I didn't realize, but because he got vulnerable, like, I'm not, like, saying, like, "Oh, I did anything." Like, praise God, Jesus, you did it. But because he was able to get vulnerable, that made me wanna get vulnerable as well. Like, I still had my walls up, but as he started getting vulnerable and I'm watching the fruit in his life, like, it was just like, I wanna meet him
Mm.
and continue to work through some things, and it's changed our life.
Even talking to you as mature and obviously supernaturally aware, I think sometimes that the younger generation is extraordinarily hard on themselves on the inside. Would that be a fair assessment? Like anytime I talk to somebody that's below the age of 24, it becomes painfully obvious to me that their speech to themselves and the way they view themselves is very dark and it's very sad and it's very discouraging. Is that a fair?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, I think I do that as well. I mean, we were talking
Go
about
ahead.
that, and I recognized in my life a lot of it was coming from what I was consuming.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first became a Christian, like I told you, God took away my anxiety and depression. But the first month, I was like, why do I feel sadness creeping up on me? Or why do I feel negative? And it was the music I was listening to. And I didn't even listen to the music for the words. I was listening to it because I liked the way it sounded. I liked
Yeah.
the sound. But what I was listening to was dictating my mood. And so I was like, all right, I can't listen to this right now. And I changed what I listened to and I saw a positive result because I did that. And so I had to be careful what I was consuming, what voices were in
Yeah.
my life from anything because it
I'll,
was
I'll,
making me
I'll
hard.
say this to you as a friend as well. I would also like to submit, sure, it could be the music. And this is the third time I've caught you like not being human almost. Like there's a chance that when you felt the sadness creeping in, that it was you had some brain chemicals happening and that just
Right.
happens. I find that a lot. I find I think the older you get, the less quick you are to put a period on the end of something. And I
Mm,
think it's something that you can run with in your generation because it's almost like when we talked on your pod, it's funny how when people become Christians, they immediately become the judge of everybody. It's like, I've been saved for 2 weeks. I'm about to tell you, 70-year-old, exactly where you've gone wrong. And that's a natural, insecure, immediate projection, right? But
mhm.
all new Christians do it. I did it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did it. It's like now that I'm on the team, we can finally get some of this church stuff rectified. Oh, God's been missing out on me. And then life will humble you quickly. And you get to a point where you're like, all right, maybe I should have less judgments and more
Mm,
observations. I think
mm,
that can be really helpful for your generation as well. Just to say, yeah, this music, I can see a thread that leads to some fruit that I don't love. Yeah. And also, I could just be going through something in my body and so much freer because what we end up doing, like I talked to a guy who was like, "Oh, I struggle with lust. I struggle with lust." And I'm like, okay, could you also be a human that's attracted to women that you find attractive? Well, yeah. Awesome. Let's go real slow on the lust label for a second because that makes it easier. Okay, if I can diagnose this, as that, and churches like to do that too because it's easier. So rather than teach you how to sort it out yourself and be open
mhm,
and figure it out, we want to give things really big names. And the problem with that is it creates like a concrete doctrine in your own soul. It's like, well,
mm,
that guy has a lust problem. The rest of your life, you're going to be shaking that little stupid title someone gave you. I just like the premise of remaining a little bit more open to some occurrences,
mm,
and it happens in because if you live that way throughout the course of your life, you find yourself in marriage and say, I don't feel it with my wife anymore. Oh, maybe something's it. Maybe it's just a tough week. Maybe we don't have to put this huge definitive label on stuff.
ah,
And I just think I want to submit that to you as you continue to operate in this space. Just watch how quick people are to make these definitive judgments about everything. That person is a this, or this means this will happen.
well,
If he's doing a song with her, it means his music is now no longer godly. Whoa, where did we get this gavel from that we just drop all the time? And I think it's really
well,
resourceful for people sometimes to back up and say, let me look at all the judgments I've made about myself and just look at it from a different angle for a second. I really struggle with this. Okay, cool. Let's look at it. Do you? Maybe you're working through it in a beautiful way, like we've been talking about kind
yeah,
of off camera, just the framing. But I see that in you. I see the ability to help people think even more clearly. Some of your compassion It might even come from you have a brother
Yeah,
that's autistic?
yeah.
What's that been like?
Oh, wow. Well, it's been so hard to navigate. I the first
What
time
how does his autism manifest in, like, your experience? What is that? Because every autism, very broad brush sometimes.
Right, right. Well, when he was born, he was nonverbal, and then my parents worked with him, and he can drive.
Interesting.
He went to autism program in college. He has Asperger's. He is an expert at very specific hyperfixations. It's amazing. He's an expert on traffic lights, trains, electronics. It's crazy. Game shows. He's memorized every episode of Jeopardy. It's the most profound thing I've ever
So,
seen in my
one
life.
could say he's phenomenally, supernaturally gifted.
Absolutely.
Also known as our world, it's a disorder, he's got Asperger's.
Mm.
But what you just described sounds like a savant genius.
He is. He is a genius. He is a genius, and he's amazing. When we were growing up, he had never told me he loved me before.
Hmm,
And this year he told me for the first time ever. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. But I knew he loved me because of his actions towards
mm,
me. And it was like, even though he couldn't express it verbally, he showed me that love. And I think the way he acted towards me out of love has allowed me to do the same.
mm,
Because with him, I had to come to agreement of, okay, just because he can't say I love you doesn't mean he doesn't love me. So let me look at how he loves and let me like see how he's doing it in my life. And man, he has loved me incredibly and has taught me how to love people. He's so funny. He's the funniest dude I know.
that's awesome.
And
It's interesting to me, though, that you had a brother that struggled with communication, and you are becoming an expert at it. So, there's always some thread to somebody's past that led to there's probably a reason why you've always been so interested in, "How can I make sense? How can I communicate this?" Because you had a brother that needed you to work extra hard.
mm,
That's fascinating.
that is
And
fascinating.
you do a lot of missionary work too,
Yeah.
but you do my favorite kind, which is kinda your backyard.
Yeah.
I always had something to say about people that were quick to sign up for the trip to Rwanda, but you won't clean up any chairs in the church parking lot. Like,
Right.
how is that more holy? Both need people. So
Yeah.
I love it when I see young people that are like, "I am active in missionary work." "Oh, do you go to Guatemala? Do you go to Gr" "No, no, I go to Van Nuys."
Yeah.
There's actually people there that need it. It's just as holy. It might not get the same amount of Christian valor that we award people who go
Right.
off into places, um, but I just wanna acknowledge how brave it is to do work like you do in your hometown.
Wow.
Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you love and what you do?
Yeah, well, that's encouraging because whenever I say that, people are like, "Oh, you hate overseas missions?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." Like, I love it.
Classic Gen Z take, though.
Yeah.
Because you do work here, you must hate something else.
Yeah.
Feel free to use your brain. How are you landing on that quickly? Like, that kind of stuff is such a symptom of I didn't grow up in a generation like that. I see it now even on the comments I see people make. I'm like, "Who how did you get there?
Yeah.
Where did your brain go?" But continue. So I can't believe people take shots at that, but
Yeah, I'm like, "Well, it's amazing," but it's like what you said, it's like people think, "Oh, I'm a missionary, I'm gonna go build wells in Africa," and I'm
right.
like, "Okay, we need that," but there's, like, people just as sick in America. Maybe not we don't
Yeah.
need wells, but
Even more
maybe
fu take the word "but" out, just use "and."
and. Mm,
We need wells in Africa, and there's homeless people in Van Nuys.
I like
But sometimes you're gonna take that and run with it, like, but normally minimizes what's before or after,
mm,
and we
I like
need
that.
people. Bryce, we need people to go overseas. We so do. And my neighbor doesn't know anything.
I like that.
Yeah, but means so yeah, I think you're describing the beauty of what can be the whole world. But
Mm.
so go back. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, 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 that was
Hang on.
powerful. I like that. Yeah, we focus on America because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, man, I love America, I love people here." Like, it is so fun to get to talk to people about Jesus, and it's so fun, um, to watch them react because I love watching how people react, and it teaches me about them. Our neighbor across the street from our house
Mm,
here hates my guts, like, absolutely will not talk to me. I went over there, knocked on his door, first day being here. He opens the door and I say, "Hey, my name's Bryce. I just moved in across the street." I stick my hand out to shake him and he slams the door in my face.
mm,
He wants nothing to do with me. I've gone over there and I've talked to his wife. I walked over there when they were both outside because I said they can't run away from me if
yeah,
I walk up to him if they're outside. And he turned his back on me. He literally turned his back to me and would not talk to me. And
I like this guy.
and he's awesome. I love him. I think he's amazing. and, but he won't talk to me, and I just love it. I love it because I'm like, I don't know what his perception is, but it's not of me. It's a misrepresentation of Jesus. He's associating it with me because every time I walk
Yep.
over there, I've got the biggest Jesus shirt on. Every time I go over there.
Yeah, you're very closeted about your beliefs with your clothes.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. No one would know. And, so it's fun and, like, just getting to talk to people and hearing and what I've realized is, like, a lot of evangelism is just listening
Mm,
and, like, hearing where people are, and I'm coming to find that people are more open to listening to me
yeah.
because I listen to them, and they say
Yep.
crazy stuff to me, and I just don't react. Like, "Oh, yeah, I'd burn Jesus on the stake," and I just sit there like a normal human being. I don't react like, "Oh my gosh, how dare you say that? You're gonna blaspheme." I'm like, "Dude, like, what?" Like, come on. Like, he's angry, and he's projecting his hurt on me. It's not on me, he's just hurt. But, like, I have the opportunity to let him meet the real
Yeah.
Jesus right now, and so it is so fun to get to talk to people about it, and I've also realized that people just wanna be talked to.
Yeah.
It's like people are waiting for someone to talk to them. It's crazy.
I'll give you a you're talking to you, I see a lot of myself in you, which is so fun. Um, and you might try this on and like it. I never framed anybody as they hate me. I'd always frame it as, "Oh, that guy loves me, he doesn't know it yet."
Oh, I like that.
So when I think of your neighbor, what if we don't even allow hate in the narrative? And it's like, this
Mm,
dude, my best friend across the street, he does not even know yet how close we're gonna be. Everything's different now.
I like
If
that.
it's, "Oh, my neighbor, he hates me, I'm gonna win him." Now it's a different posture, and I think
Mm,
one of the things you're good at innately, have you heard that word a lot? Like,
yeah.
what is an innate gift? It's hard to teach, and so it took me years to realize that not everybody can go into a gas station and leave with everybody coming to church. I just thought everyone should do that, so I used to put a lot of pressure on other people, like, "You don't love Jesus like I do. You haven't brought anybody to church in a year." And I would use it as, like, a ministerial challenge only to realize later, not everybody's equipped to do the same thing. You might not be good at on the street conversations, but that's not really the point of what you're doing. You are investing into people with supernatural love, and the way you do it happens to be with your words. But I like it when people see someone like you and don't get discouraged. Like, well, I can't go out on the street like Bryce Crawford. Nobody's asking you to. What's the point of what you're doing? You're using your life to be a light. So maybe you can do that in a library. Maybe you can do that
Mhm,
wherever you are. But I like people not getting discouraged by your gifting, but being inspired by it because the point of what you're doing is the most basic tenet of the gospel. And I think you hit it on the head, bro. Like in all my years of seeing people receive what I have to say, it's always when I wasn't trying as my point. So it's one thing for me to listen to you and can't wait for you to stop talking so now I can tell you, I'm about to convert you. I'm about to do like, I just did away with that a long time ago, and the ease in which conversations would show up, it was like, I just what do you believe and why? Tell me more, and just to learn about people genuinely, not so I can find the hook. There's this problem. But just to hear you because I think you're a cool person. I wanna hear where you're from, what you believe, and the amount of people who come back and say, "Can can you tell me what you believe?" What a beautiful place to share faith from
wow.
a person actually asking. And I don't know if there's a little book in the Bible called Philemon,
Uh-huh.
and, there's a line in there that talks about being prepared to give a reason for the faith you have. It's under talked about. You know why?
Mm,
The inference is that you should have such a beautiful, vibrant, radiant life that people should be coming up to you and asking you why.
mm,
People just scroll over that scripture and like, you know why? Because it's harder. It's harder to live a life that is attractive and kind and vibrant than it is to go talk to people you don't know. And you don't do that. There are people that I do take issue with that don't earn the right to be in a community, but yet think they're courageous by standing up in a restaurant
mm.
or, and then they'll get praise for this online. It's like, let
Right.
me get this straight. So you stood up at your table at that fancy restaurant and you preached the gospel and you were escorted out and you feel persecuted and nobody, well, okay. But what if there's Christians in that room that have been working for years at showing people not all Christians are going to yell at you. And then you came and did that and you think you're bold. I think there is a beautiful balance of people who we need your type of ministry, which is boldness, but it's not based out of, I'm going to go save the world. Bryce has something to say. Your whole movement and what you do is about God has loved me. And so I'm going to show people that love any way I can. That posture is why you're effective, my brother, and it's never gonna change unless you allow somebody else to change it. Because your thing is not, "I wanna see my neighbor fall to his knees and meet Jesus." Sure, in our prayer times, yeah, that's a beautiful moment, but you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. That's it. God's in control of outcomes. Well,
Mm.
sometimes that could ease the pressure,
Yeah,
you know?
that is so encouraging. That is so encouraging. Yeah, I think like what you said about so many people when we first started were like, why aren't they? You haven't led them through a salvation prayer, and every person that you go to, they don't pray a prayer, and this and that. And I'm
Imagine
thinking,
how dumb that is. Hold on, I can't even let you gracefully go over that. Imagine thinking and commenting on a video that you didn't lead them in a prayer. So the inference is that there is a particular thing somebody can say
right,
that will then change their eternity forever. Got it. Thanks, smart guy from TikTok land. Like, imagine that. Imagine letting that bother you. And there are people who let that kind of thing bother them.
right.
We live in a world where if you put up a beautiful video and someone getting supernaturally changed, they're going to be like, this guy didn't do a King James salvation prayer. Do you know who they also would have hated so much? Jesus. I mean, Jesus used to do stuff like that on purpose just to mess with people. Like, Jesus is the
Mm,
same guy who snapped his fingers, a lame guy got up and walked, and people criticized Jesus for healing him on the wrong day.
mhm.
Doesn't that sound like our world?
Is
Like,
exactly.
rather than, "Hey, great news that the dude that was completely not unable to walk his whole life is now dancing. It's the wrong day, Jesus." It sounds a lot like our Christian community today. Rather than see a young man like you crushing it and just being a light, what kind of Bible training does Bryce Crawford have? What stream of theology is he working from? That's called people who have no fruit in their own lives. So they love to pick apart the fruit of others.
Mm,
So my advice to you is just to keep on having this overflowing orchard of fruit. I've never used overflowing an orchard in the same breath, and I'm you sticking with it. But that's what I love about you, bro. It didn't take me long to see it and read it. Like, there's a big difference between I'm reaching the streets of LA for Jesus and and then who I believe you represent, which is God's done a lot in my life. Anybody who's willing to hear about that, I'm gonna show you.
mm.
I'm gonna tell you. Either way, you're gonna experience me. Who doesn't love kind people? Who doesn't love encouraging people? Like, I've never seen an encouraging, kind person come down the road and be like, "Oh, hell, if I get one more encouraging word from that guy." And that's kind of the way Christians should be rolling, technically. Like, "Oh, here comes that guy who has that weird faith." But I'll tell you what else he has. He's always got money. He's it's not a lot. Give me something. He's always kind. He's gonna tell me something about myself that I didn't know. Imagine if that was the rep of
Mhm.
Christians in LA. Those people are freakishly kind. What would our world do with that?
Oh, man, it'd be incredible. There would be a wave of revival hitting the country if everyone does it. I think that is exactly what Jesus does. There's a book by John C. Maxwell called Five Levels of
Who's
Leadership.
that guy?
He's
John Maxwell?
Yeah,
Yo,
John
bro, that guy
Maxwell.
has written more leadership books than anyone in the world. If you're ever around John Maxwell, even the stuff he says by accident is better than your intentional stuff. He's so annoying to be around. Shout out to John Maxwell. You talk about a faithful dude. Continue.
So
You learn that.
encouraging.
Yeah,
He said that a level 5 leader he classifies as the best leader you can be is someone that can duplicate themselves.
right.
And I was like, "It's so interesting." And I'm like, "Okay, well, Jesus, I'm trying to become like Jesus. He's duplicating himself. Okay, like we need more people like Jesus."
Yeah.
Like what you're saying. I literally just read that scripture this morning. He goes in the synagogue on the Sabbath and heals a withered guy's hand
Yeah.
just to frustrate the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the Lord on the Sabbath.
You know,
That doesn't
my
amen.
favorite part about that story is that Jesus specifically orders him to walk through the church. Could have done it
Mm,
privately, but he wanted to antagonize religious spirits. And that's the thing that's how weird my brain is. Like, wherever Jesus presses buttons, I'm like, "That's my guy." But imagine having the wherewithal for Jesus to say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you're healed. But I want you to walk across just to make sure anybody who's not offended gets offended, just so everybody can see this." Like, that to me is the new wave that you can continue to represent. And I don't think it's a matter of revival would. I think it's a matter of revival will.
mm,
And you're gonna be a part of something like that. I
wow.
think your generation will see the kindest move of God, and people often fail to forget that the Bible's pretty clear that kindness leads to repentance. Who knew? Don't hear that a lot on TikTok. But that's the essence of our faith that we miss out sometimes, and it's our own projection. Again, like, going back to what we talked about, if you're mad at yourself and you don't think God is for you, and you think he's judging you, what kind of witness would you be? A
Mm,
very judgy, annoying, negative one.
right.
But if you sit here today and you're like, "I have been forgiven. God loves me. He sees me. I'm working on stuff. I am getting sanctified day in and day out. I'm so grateful." That's an effective posture right away.
Mm,
Like, people are gonna notice that's different, but if you leave this house and you're like, "Oh, I had a rough night. Can't stop looking at stuff online. I'm a freaking failure. I should be over this by now. I can't." Who are you who are you worried about judging you? God? The same guy who said there's no judgment? I took it off you? Like, he suddenly became the judge again? So I think I get excited when I think about what you're gonna continue to show people, 'cause we need it. We need it badly.
well, thank you. Yeah, that is really encouraging. What do you think is like, how can I continue to navigate the opinions of other people? How do you shut out the crowd noise when there's people throwing stuff at you?
Beautiful trick called know your they. So typically when we're hurting, we'll say, They said this." I learned a trick, which is, okay, who's they? Well, they. Yeah, but like who? Name them. Give me their names and faces. Well, I don't really know, but oh, interesting. Okay, cool. So the they that is dominating you negatively, you can't even articulate who they are.
Mm,
So if you know your they, who is your they? They influence me. I want to intentionally put the they in my life so I don't have to listen to the other they. There's no they for me. Like, I know I've got people who will hold me accountable, tell me hard truths, encourage me, guide me, and say no to things that I want to say yes. That's the they that I care about. Everybody else, I'm here to help. So when I look at, let's say, a podcast, I would send it to the same people. Those are my they. And these are people from all different walks of life. And so I know the pulse of the podcast. I'm not going to look at the thousands of comments. I appreciate it, but I'm not going to let your criticism or praise dictate what I do, because you're not part of that day.
mm,
No, why would I do that? Like, I'm pretty secure in the day. So I think for you, as you move forward, just make sure you got the people that love you enough to tell you what you don't want to hear, but they're just as quick to tell you what you need to hear that's helpful.
mm.
Sometimes people pride themselves on, "I'm the guy who's going to tell you no." It's like, all right, bro. Well, sometimes maybe switch it up. But I think there's a place for you to just say, okay, this is how you're going to stave off this rush of. I am familiar with the pain of speculative people. I've dealt with that a time or two in my life, and when I was able to overcome it was when I was able to say, "You know what? Let me just be very, mindful. I appreciate it." Like, I'm not gonna be one of those guys who doesn't understand the pulse of what people are saying, but there is a line when
Mm,
it comes to like, who moves me, who influences me. Those are people I put in play. So I would ask you today, Bryce, who's your they? And when you can answer that quickly, boom, you're good. But if you don't know, that means your they is whoever they are.
ooh,
I don't know. I don't know that person criticizing you. I don't know who the hell they are. Like, why would they be dominating your head today? Like, they could be a freaking idiot. But yet that one comment stung so much, now it shaped your direction. They're not a part of your they.
yeah.
They didn't earn that right. So once you get that kind of space in your life, it's gonna be powerful.
Well, yeah, that is really encouraging. Super encouraging. Thank you.
Yeah. I want you to come back. I want you to keep checking in with the lights on crew that we have, because you're really, really helpful in so many ways. And your youth means nothing negative to me. You've taught me a lot today. In the time we spent together, I've learned a lot from you. And I just want to encourage you. An old preacher told me one time, I was worried about being a young leader. He said, I get that. And he goes, just give people as many areas of your life to follow as you can. Don't worry about how old you are. So financially, personally, the way you clean your car, the way take give people so much evidence that you are worthy to follow, that it negates the one piece of evidence, which is your age.
Mm,
And I was like, "Oh, I can do that because I can't control how you feel about my age." If some guy is too proud to hear from you because they're old, that's not a you thing, that's a they thing.
well, that's
So I just wanna encourage you that your wisdom is gonna span generations, and you never have to fight for people to listen to you, but I want you to know, from a 46-year-old middle-aged white guy, watching you inspires me, and don't stop doing it. There's a lot of people that love you. For every one random critic that has their own issues and they pointed at you, there's 1,000 that love you and believe you and pray for you. So don't forget that.
Thank you so much. That's encouraging. Thank you. I appreciate you. I've learned so much from you today too. It's been awesome.
You're my Gen Z they from now on.
Let's go. Let's go.
I want to check with you before I make my judgment. But lights on. We're better because you're on it. Come back.
I'd love to. That'd be awesome.
Check out Bryce, all his stuff, YouTube, TikTok. He's a superstar for good reason. And your podcast is on,
On everything.
like you have a podcast almost daily sometimes on Bible, whatever. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of. So subscribe, check it out. Um, put her there, partner. Like we went Western Georgian.
I like that.